Wakey, wakey, another beautiful day. And a cold one for that matter. Numbingly cold, that is. Make sure, of course, you keep warm today. It is Thursday, the 2nd day of May. And I'm glad that you're joining us here on Morning Prime. I trust that you had a lovely restorative night as always. And they say that let's be up and doing to a purpose. So be up and doing, don't be late. You'll be searching for that 1 hour the whole day. So make sure you bang on time. Right, today is Sokoni, and every Thursday we are looking at what or how the state of the economy is looking. A lot of things have been happening. Yesterday was a big day, of course, Labor Day, and such a dismal promises that was coming from the government regarding the pay rise, only a dismal 6%, while the trade unionists were gagging for 22%. We shall be looking at that as well, and other parts of course, our region, what they have been doing as well. The debate about also the permanent and contractual employment also that is in the public domain right now. And we shall be looking also on a lot of issues as far as the NSC is concerned, and the flight of some of the international investors there. But of course, everything is looking optimistic and sanguine as far as the Nairobi Security Exchange is concerned, and a raft of other issues as well. We know also the American Chamber of Commerce was here, and we had deliberations of the president and on how we can tighten up that particular relations between the investors from the US and Kenya as well. We shall be giving you those deliberations as well much later in the course of the program today. But let's see how the weather will be today. Whatever the weather, we will weather the weather. All right, let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of a Standard today. Labor gloom as Ruto dashes pay rise hopes. That is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. Workers' Day, despite a spirited push for a 22.5% salary hike, employees walked away with little to smile about. The expectations of a big increase to counter the high cost of living dashed, even as the president promised only 6% raise, with the implementation left to Labour CS. You have the story on page 6 and 7 and 8 of the Standard today. 6%. I am directing Labour CS to convene the relevant committee to sit and look into how we can increase the minimum wage by at least 6%. This is the sentiment from the president yesterday during the Labour Day that was marked at Uhuru Garden. Mai Mahiu death hit. The deaths are hitting right now 50 as floods claim more lives and property. And you can see how at work also the Kenya Defence Forces and National Youth Service clearing a waterway on the Nakuru Mai Mahiu highway blocked by the debris dumped by raging floods in Monday's Kijabe Gali tragedy. The efforts are part of search and recovery efforts for over 80 missing individuals. And we pray that these 80 missing individuals may be found. DP Dindi war plays out in visit to landslide site. A visit planned by DP Rigathi Gachagua to landslide victims in Madhya on Tuesday. So his office is deployed to prepare ground for him. However, a host of MPs led by Ndindi Nyoro landed in a helicopter before noon, causing confusion. And you can read all about this confusion there on page 9 of the Standard this morning. And this is how it looks. Champions League, how it all went down. You can find all that story on page 40. All the wiser you can get to be today if you grab a copy of the real estate tucked away inside the Standard as well. Why the wealthy are shunning commercial property. All that inside the Standard. The Daily Nation, this is what you're waking up to. Ruto farm on taxes. Intern doctors pay. Labor Day. Good news as President orders 6% minimum wage increase for workers. That is what the flagger is reading here. Kuitwa Zakayo sio jambo bora. Kuitwa Zakayo sio jambo bora, tulipe ushuru. Zakayo ni jina, hakuna problem. Bora tujenge Kenya hii, watu wapate nyumba, tuwe na universal health coverage, vijana wetu wapate ajira. Those were sentiments of the president yesterday during the Labor Day celebrations. Tough stance. President William Ruto yesterday ruled out a tax reprieve for Kenyans whose salaries have taken a beating in the last year and who face even more tax measures, including shift deductions in July. This even as the head of state urged striking doctors to accept the government's offer for interns and go back to work. That story on page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. And stranded motorists and other road users yesterday at a flooded section of Elbagonjoro Road at Kamwaura in Nakuru County. Transport was paralyzed for hours, causing heavy traffic snarl-up on both sides of the road. And you can see how telling it is here. Marooned roads closed and homes underwater. Also, you can see more stories and pictures there on page 2 and 3. Thousands of Kenyans were stranded yesterday with many roads closed and homes submerged following heavy rains that have pounded several parts of the country, leaving a trail of death and destruction. That is inside the Daily Nation. Yatani fails to block EACC's 1.2 billion shillings corruption probe. The High Court has declined to block the anti-graft agency from investigating former Treasury's CS Ukuri Yatani over claims of embezzlement of public funds amounting to 1.2 billion shillings during his tenure as Marsabit governor. That is tucked away on page 12 of the Daily Nation. Hope wins for missing victims of Mai Mahiu in the horrific aftermath of the Mai Mahiu flooding tragedy that killed 52 people. Anguished families are still locked in a desperate search for their missing loved ones. 3 days after disaster struck, hope is winning for the 51 people who are still unaccounted for. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. Property magazine also comes in handy for you every Thursday. Ruto grants 6% raise, rejects court demands. This is the splash on the front page of the Star. Minimum wage workers had demanded a 22% pay rise during the Labor Day. Increment means lowest paid worker receives 912 more. And you have the story on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. You can see also a related picture there, exchanging niceties there. President William Ruto and Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli at Uhuru Gardens yesterday. More stories on page 8. Devastation and danger as floods cause havoc. And you can see city underwater. Matatus here are stuck in floods due to the ongoing heavy rains along Enterprise Road in Nairobi County. This is just here behind, just some few kilometers from Standard Media Group where we are. And And this is the devastation that people are now facing. Buildings collapses and kills widow, I should say, kills widow in Kirinyaga County. A 40-year-old woman died after a house that was under construction collapsed at Karia in Kerugoya town. This is Kirinyaga County yesterday. Lydia Wabera was asleep in a house with her 2 children, aged 16 and 10, when a 3-story building collapsed at midnight. County Police Commander said they will liaise with the relevant authorities in the investigations. You can follow the story on page 3 of The Star today. President enacts 273 billion shillings in fresh budget cuts. President William Ruto has made good his threat to slash ministry's budget by hundreds of billions in the coming financial year in a move meant to align expenditures with available resources. Estimates tabled in Parliament by the National Treasury shows the Kenya Kwanza government has slashed the budget for the financial year starting July the 1st. And you can follow the story on page 6 of The Star. So the question is, was it 350 or this is now the amount that they've settled to 273. D-Day for Linturi as MPs vote to form prop team. You can follow the story on page 7. It's all about the impeachment that will be happening today, and you can read the rest of the details in The Star. Says Linturi in removal ward, the die is cast for him, according to the People Daily. After being grilled by criminal investigators over fertilizer scandal, the CS is set to face MPs who reconvene today to debate special motion seeking his ouster from office. The story continues on page 7 of the People Daily. This motion is the last resort that the people of this country, through their elected leadership, can take as a way of holding to account those that have been put in service of the nation. And this is what Opiyo Wandayi was saying. You can read the rest of the details on page 7 of the People Daily. Flood victims reveal how they survived, and you can see what the torrential rains have done here. The rest of the details on page 4 and 5 of the People Daily. State agencies face massive budget cuts. That's a story you want to read. That is the 273 billion shillings we were talking about. And NCPB top officials in court over fake fertilizer. This is on page 6 of the People Daily this morning. Let's move on. We see what Taifa Leo is holding. Hata Zakayo ni jina. Katika sherehe ya Labor Day, Rais achora taswira ya utawala wa mpende msipende. Right, you can read the rest of the details there. Hata Zakayo ni jina. Professor Gitura, I can see you, cracking a smile there. That story on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Atuolia mpende msipende. Atuolia pata watetezi siku ya Labor Day. That is what Taifa Leo is holding here. Raila hali wala kulala kuhusu wadhifa wa AUC. That is Taifa Leo. And aeleza jinsi alivyofuga joka Omieri. Alimfuga chatu huyo wa futi 16 kwa miaka 28 na kumzalia vijoka vingine. And this is the story on page 77. Dr. Shemo Chodho will be intimately familiar with Omieri.
It's not a favorite. When it comes to serpents, we are not the best of buddies.
We're not the best of buddies.
No.
All right. Dr. Shemo Chodho, Chair KDA, is here as well. And this is what Taifa Leo is holding for us today. Let's just see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. Now, banks, pension funds blocked from juicy infrastructure bonds. Treasury miles restricting bonds to retail investors. Investments analysts warn of reduced uptake. This is a move that the government now is mulling over. Institutional investors such as pension funds, commercial banks, and insurance companies could soon be locked out over lucrative infrastructure bonds in a proposed radical shift in the rules for participation in Kenya's debt market. This will mean that institutional investors could effectively be barred from participating in an investment instrument that typically attracts a massive appetite due to its tax-free status and relatively higher interest rates compared to, of course, other financial instruments. You can read the rest of the story inside the Business Daily. And what does this mean? It means maybe a lot of money now will be available to business enterprises.
Right.
Now the banks will not be going for this infrastructure bonds, and patient funds, of course, will be blocked from here. That is the story. I was just wondering, especially, and I wish I'd be discussing this, when it comes to the pension fund, the interest that is accrued collectively, when they go to invest,
Right.
vis-a-vis what you really get, you think there's justice?
Good
Right.
question, actually.
Is there justice? All right.
I'm not sure it's a difficult word to say justice.
Justice. Just leave it there.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it. Right? We'll come back to it. All right, let's go to Uganda. While we are mulling over changing our civil servants or that from permanent and punishable employment, Uganda is mulling or saying the staff on permanent terms, hire staff on permanent terms. This is what President Museveni said yesterday, demanding that employers hire workers on permanent terms, a pronouncement which, if implemented, will make job contracts mandatory and working terms predictable and more secure. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor this morning, and this is how it went down yesterday. President Museveni rewards a dance group of children during Labor Day celebrations in Fort Portal City yesterday. Mr. Museveni has directed the State Minister for Labour, Employment and Industrial Relations, Ms. Esther Anyakun, to ensure the employment status for workers is regularized. Museveni has refused to lose the mask, right? Completely.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right, and of course, if you're to meet him, you have to wear a mask.
Right.
This is a story you want to follow inside the Daily Monitor. The big names behind Uganda coffee exports also splashed inside the publication today. People with hearing impairment demand interpreters in hospitals. That is a story you want to follow on page 3 of the Daily Monitor this morning. Let's see what the Citizen is holding for us. No salary raise yet, but all is not lost. This is what we do have inside the Citizen today. All was not lost for public sector employees on Labor Day after President Samia Suluhu Hassan promised to continue keeping an eye on global economic uncertainties before making the much anticipated salary raise announcement. You have the story on page 2 of the Citizen. So at least we were given 6%. We should be happy.
Yeah, in a
In
way.
Tanzania, there was nothing.
It's better than nothing.
Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu Hassan has directed me to tell Tanzanian workers that even if this situation persists, they should still have a hope, as she will say something. This is what Vice President Philip Mpango said yesterday, and you can see arm in arms there how they were standing in solidarity. Government officials led by Vice President Philip Mpango joined the guests in singing a solidarity song at Sheikh Amri Abeid Stadium in Arusha, where Labor Day was marked nationally yesterday. Overseas education, bogus agencies spark fears. Experts have warned of the existence of dubious agencies that are out to swindle students wishing to study abroad. You have a story on page 3. Sugar boards pledge on supply. That is the Citizen. Babati villagers reap big from carbon trading, and you can read all about it on page 5 of the Citizen this morning. And also business financing. First ever green bond for water development, oversubscribed. Water Green Board TZ's 52.12 billion shillings. You can follow the story inside the Citizen this morning. In Rwanda, BK Capital raises MTN and Rwanda stock target by 48%. The stock price of MTN Rwanda is likely to increase in future to reach 250 Rwandan francs from the current 170. And you have a story on page 3 of the New Times. Maybe you can tell us, you're intimately familiar with MTN and the network in, you are the
was one of
the godfather who laid the infrastructure of internet in Rwanda.
Not about the godfather. Of course, there's a god higher, but President Kagame really made it possible. But I was one of the foot soldiers.
Yes.
Why?
I think MTN Rwanda is a good brand, so I'm not surprised.
You're not surprised.
No.
All right, and this is what is in the New Times.
I'm only surprised they haven't come to Kenya as MTN. I don't know when they will.
We think it is going to make a big difference
As
well.
a regional, MTN is one of Vodacom. They're some of the biggest brands in Africa in this sector. We only have Airtel. Because Safaricom is big, but it's only in 2 countries as far as I know, Kenya and Ethiopia. So MTN, Vodacom, yes, and Airtel are the big names in Africa.
Maybe Patrick has some inside details why they're greatly shy to join Kenya. I mean, it's been a while. But we've never had MTN here before.
No.
They've never been attempted.
Attempt, I think they have.
They had attempted to be here, then they pulled out, isn't it?
You throw those things at me. I think you've seen the history of companies coming from south going north. They have the ones that have come into Kenya.
Yes.
Have not fared very well, and I think there is a big issue in terms of the approach into the Kenya economy. Our companies in Kenya are very, very resilient, and they will protect their turf very, 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 very vigorously. I mean, I think that the classic battle was not between EABL and
SABL.
And SAB, yeah? And I mean, and SAB is a huge company. It went on to become a global company, yeah? It bought quite a lot of companies. And yet Kenya, it could not penetrate, or it actually suffered and left with the tail between the legs. So I think before you come into Kenya, you really have to do your homework. And one of the best ways of entry into Kenya that we sort of tell a lot of people is to actually either purchase an existing company within Kenya and then work through it, or form a partnership with a company within Kenya. But if you go and try and come in alone, you will. I mean, you either need to have very, very deep pockets, or accept that you're going to come in and leave. The only companies I've seen coming in have put very deep pockets, some like Carrefour, but they came into a space where a lot of Kenyan companies had broken and gone under. So they came into a space that had a vacuum.
Yeah.
So they've come in and they've really taken over a lot of the assets that those companies had, and they're moving on. So they literally, the locations had been sourced properly, etc., etc. So all you do is you come, you put your money in, the location is fine. The customers are there already. So they've been able to come in and survive.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at I look at a company like CMC. What has happened? I mean, the people who came and bought it are slowly changing the business model. Yeah. So Kenya is not an easy place to come into. Somebody has to be really smart and understand the market. And I say, best thing is always either partner or buy out an existing franchise in Kenya.
All right, okay. And of course we saw, talking about Carrefour, the effects of a dollar, 38 billion shillings actually, they lost through that particular foreign exchange that was adversely affecting also, or has adversely affected their books at the end of the day.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
All right.
Well, perhaps before leaving the South African aspect, last week we had a deal room, and a number of companies that featured were particularly Kenyan, Nigerian, and South Africa. So obviously we have to find a way in which we not only trade among ourselves, but also invest in each other's territories. I fully agree with what Patrick is saying. Of course, one has to understand fully the terrain of the new destination where they're going to invest. But we should have policies that encourage intra-African investment.
Which is a very worrying trend, because if you look in terms, we're really talking about economic integration.
Right.
And you look the kind of business the EU is doing.
Sure.
Or we in Africa, we're even fighting our neighbors on the south.
Right.
But there's a cold war between Kenyan farms and South African farms. The South African farms don't thrive here at all. There was even one time a food chain. Was it Nando's or what?
Yeah, Nando's was from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, Zambia.
They were, but they could, even at clothing. But they managed actually in Tanzania, interesting. They actually penetrated the Tanzania market. And here, I suppose there's a lot of cutthroat here. And you have to have the tenacity and the strength to fight the Kenyan farms.
So you need to be very, very ferocious. I think also when you're talking about breweries, Castle was here as well.
Yeah, that is SAB.
SAB.
SAB was Castle, yeah.
SAB was Castle, yes.
That's the brand that Castle had. And
And you remember the bottles as well, the way they were being bought from all over. They're mopping up, they're being crushed. It's just business.
Yet the ball, I think our policy makers have got some work to do. Late last year, we were part of a team that hosted about 30 South African business women who came over, looking for opportunities to do business with Kenyan women.
Yes.
I am glad that Kenyans in South Africa, as of last week, a company has started to do tracking all the way from South Africa by road to Kenya. I think such efforts need to be encouraged, particularly if they can be sustainable and profitable. It's got to be done, but policy has to support it, has to be deliberate.
Indeed. Of course, you can grab also the copy of East African South Sudan Auditor queries use of IMF bailout cash. Audit report cites irregularities in award of tenders, taxation of government's contracts, and accounting issues around $114 million emergency fund. This is on page 6 of the East African this week. And Somalia woos East African investors. And we can see a picture here of that conference that went down there in Somalia, where we can see Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Bare being given a trophy at the Invest Somalia Conference and Expo 2024. And of course, if you flip through the pages, you'll see one person there that is supposed to be one of our panelists that was there, and this is Bill Okero.
That's right.
Bill Okero.
I saw him.
Bill Okero, you can tell us now. At least you'll give us an inside information.
So green from Somalia. Fresh from Somalia.
Fresh from
Somalia. Happy New Year.
I thought you'll have come with some, some good perfume from.
Yeah, it's a very interesting trip because I said, let me go and see this Somali.
Yeah, I saw you somewhere there.
Program. Yeah, there was an investment conference. It was hosted by some of the Kenyan companies together with the government.
Yeah,
and you're busy there reading. Yeah, that's Bill Okero.
So I think basically the government was trying to tell the investors from the region that the country is open for business. You should come and invest into in the country. And so I think I was a bit. There are a few things that surprised me. One in the banking sector. I didn't know there are up to 20 banks operating in Somalia. In fact, one of them is an international bank, one or two of them. They're also very advanced on the digital or whatever. They don't. It's cashless. Everything is cashless. There are up to 4 or 5 companies that operate M-Pesa kind of or e-wallets and what. People just use phone to pay everything.
Sure.
And their currency apparently appears to be the dollars. The Somali currency is no longer. Everyone uses dollars. All businesses and
the
every
Halas and
institution.
the Shabs they're the main conduit of transacting.
But they use dollars. Dollars is the easiest.
Yeah, they use dollars. So you don't.
Right.
You don't even hear about the Somali currency. Everyone uses dollars, and their banks, and everyone uses this. So I was a bit surprised. The other thing that surprised me is the large number of Kenyans who are working there, particularly in the in education sector, in hospitality, professionals, in banks and other consultancies. That's why when I read this week that up to $200 million annually, the remittances from Somalia. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. So, but I didn't know there were so many Kenyans, particularly including even the NGO sector. So where I was staying, I was told that there is no power blackout in that city. Yeah, they don't have it. Absolutely.
Wow.
They are private power generators, 2 major companies. So in every business you connect, both of them connect for you. If one has a problem, you switch on the other one. And because they're all competing, they told us, there's no chance of water companies having a blackout because they will lose business.
So uptime is very high.
It's very high. It's very high. If you don't connect to one of them, for several months they would come and say, "You're not doing us business." So you can just switch that one on, give them some business for a few months.
Just flick up.
But both of them are connected.
Right.
This is where we should be heading as a country.
Because all the power generation is privatized. So some of them who have been to Kenya, to Nairobi, they told me, you won't see the water boozers the way you see them in Nairobi. I was surprised. Because when things are privatized, everyone wants to make money, so they do not.
Efficiency there.
Yes, that's what I have realized. Then because government has not been there for many years, so the education sector, water, all services are literally privatized. Of course, the main challenge in the country is security. That's why the conference was held in the airport.
Okay.
with your jets waiting.
Yes. The conference was held
waiting
in
to
the
taxi,
airport.
in case of.
Is still,
But also it's an easier place to secure.
Yeah, it's an easier place to secure. That's where most of the international organizations and they do not want to take the risk of going into town. But they seem to be very excited about East African community membership, and that's cool. When they were presenting all their songs in Swahili.
Oh, this one.
Yes.
This is Peoples of Royal Muslim Academy.
Those were presenting all their, welcoming songs in Swahili. They seem to be pretty much excited. So it's an interesting place for business. It seems to be booming. There's a lot of business. I went into the main town. Malls are open 24 hours, 24/7. Supermarkets open 24/7. Midnight you can be in a mall still taking coffee in the main town. The areas that require a lot of security are these areas around the airport where this international community and government officials, and those are the targets. Those are the ones who literally live in bunkers around the airport. Yeah.
Right. Indeed, of course, we had the Connected Africa Summit here. And I was in that conference. We had also, some representation from Somalia. Right. And when we're talking about fiber optics as well, I think
several, four companies I saw.
They're well connected, unbeknownst to many. The vibrancy there, the e-government, efficiency as we're talking it, is in play.
As a matter of fact, I wasn't sure Honorable Senator meant that security is a problem or insecurity.
Insecurity.
But that said, one thing, I think the last time I was in Somalia about 10 years ago, one interesting thing was that phone costs in Somalia were some of the cheapest in the continent.
Yeah.
It probably still is, which I found very interesting. But there are a host of other pluses for Somalia. I think it's good they've joined the EAC. Let's get going and get business done together with them. I didn't really know that the axiom that we have, maxim we have in telecom, all good things come into, applies in energy sector as well. The fact that there are two competing providers clearly confirms that competition is the way to go, and we should never have monopolies in anything that's a public service.
That's why even the transactions of the money is free.
All right.
They don't charge you.
They don't charge
that
you.
competition, yes.
Well, maybe we need to sit down with the chair of Kenya Diaspora Alliance, because I think the transfer issue is is a big impediment of remitting, of course, diaspora remittances in the country.
That's right. The other thing about Somalia with terms of remittance, if I'm not mistaken, I think as much as 30 or 40% of the GDP could be remittances. So this is why I'm not surprised they're trading in hard currency, the dollar. I think Somalia is one of the 3 or so African countries where the remittances at least is 25% of the GDP, the others being Lesotho and Cape Verde. So in those cases, the diaspora's role is much more key than perhaps in Kenya.
I can see Gituro really mulling over and scoping out the way he's going to actually put up a golf course there.
Oh, yeah.
Not a university.
I feel like headed there.
Yeah.
But on other bill, if you are to advise somebody, what are the areas really would a Kenyan or anybody that invests in Somalia?
I think what the
And
government...
I think I like this this write-up here, I like the point where they have did it, the 2023.
Somalia says it has removed a number of investment screening regimes that bar deployment of capital, giving foreigners the green light to wholly own their investments, repatriate capital, and enjoy full protection in the country. Somalian Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre said trade and investment restrictions arising from foreign investment regimes cause output losses of about 2%, hence Somalia's decision to enact the Investments and Investment Protection Law 2023 to attract foreign capital. He said that despite its challenges, Somalia has turned a new page. This is a new Somalia we're talking about.
It reminds me of Malaysia, actually. Very clear in terms of their 12-point grantee when you go to do business in Malaysia. So what areas would you be maybe in this sector or that sector investor look when in Somalia?
Well, the areas that the government had highlighted in the conference that they want potential investors. Energy is one of them. They said the country's got probably has the 7th largest reserves for oil and gas in the world. And so that is an area that they're really keen on investors. The other area is that they have strongly talked about is on the blue, the sea, the ocean. They have the longest coastline in Africa, over 3,000 kilometers of coastlines, and they really want that fishing and sea area sector to be investment in that sector. I think they have also emphasized on that. Then the rest, I think, is mainly they've focused a lot on food because it's a country that is reliant generally on import of food currently, and so even when we went there, I remember when some Kenyan businessmen who are exporting fruits and vegetables and things from there. So food is also another sector that they seem to have emphasized. Tea and everything comes from here. So I think those are the key areas that they seem to have.
I might be headed there in August. I met one of my students who is doing fruit trees there. So let me come and see what you're doing. So probably an opportunity to...
Yeah, even education sector is big. It's because it's all private. There are many universities and most of the teachers are from Kenya. In the schools and the universities.
So do we have also land for leasing there so that maybe you can come and plant maize? As we know also, Patrick Gubathi has a flash of interest in avocado.
The avocado business,
yeah, so there's something in Siaya. So maybe also it's a good conducive environment for avocado.
It's only Kenyans who are very good at maize.
Somalis use millet more than maize.
They use millet more.
It requires climate resistant. It requires climate resistant crops.
They're climate resistant.
So even fruits, you need fruits that are a lot more hardy in in warmer climates and stuff like that. And also which are very efficient in converting water or using water. So you need you need a different type of crop. But it's obviously possible to do a lot of agriculture in Somalia. But you got to choose the right crops and also the right systems to manage those crops. But that's key. That's key in that part of the country.
It was before the war, major export of bananas. That was the largest.
Bananas.
Banana was the main.
And of course, millet is more nutritious than maize.
Yeah, maize.
But having said that,
But is millet used for the injera? Injera is largely from the rice.
Injera is made from something called it's called it's not millet, nor is it maize.
Nor is it rice.
No, it isn't. It's a special whatever.
Really? It's with flour.
Yeah, it is wheat flour, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not wheat flour.
It's not wheat flour.
No, it's
It
not.
is. I mean, look.
I'm trying to think of
man
what
of
it is
fish
called.
is knows about injera.
No, you see, I hope you're not confusing with the one of Ethiopia.
Yes.
That's injera, yeah. That's what it's talking about.
Ethiopia would.
But it's still injera as well.
Ethiopia, they use barley.
They use barley, okay.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
But Somalis use with flour.
Liquid flour.
Right.
But about
you wanted to say something, yes.
Yeah, just in terms of the perception and insecurity, I've had this privilege to work in a number of countries that were previously in conflict, ranging from Mozambique to Angola to DRC to Rwanda. What I did find, and South Sudan, what I found out was very different from the perception in the media. So I'm quite delighted to hear that even though we wouldn't really say Somalia is out of the woods yet, but I think for the entrepreneurs, particularly the risk-averse ones, don't take things from the face value, because very often what you read in the media is very different from what you find on the ground. So, well, this is the right time to move in.
Indeed, indeed.
But with caution.
I was looking for the word for Ethiopia. It's called TEF.
TEF.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
TEF, yeah.
TEF is a different term. It's neither millet nor maize, whatever it is. It's a cereal in its own right. Yeah, and that's what they use in
I thought it
Ethiopia.
was mainly barley.
No, it's TEF. TEF is a
TEF,
very.
but not barley?
It's not barley. It's its own type of. It's a kind of a ryegrass, huh? That type of thing, but it's unique.
Ryegrass.
To Ethiopia, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, TEF. It's a special.
So these
It's a
grass,
special-
in other words.
No, it's the seeds. It's the
Okay.
seeds that come from there.
I'm just saying this with my tongue firmly.
You
in cheek.
better.
Gituru, you want to say something before we move on back home here?
And not really.
Okay.
It's
I think you've got an idea.
it's an opportunity, I think, and I think the point you raised earlier on of integration in Africa is so important that instead of fighting each other in terms of trade,
Right.
these are the areas you have the economic integration, and that's what will really have a lot to do with the group. There's a very interesting discussion on Monday by Museveni at the KICC, if you
Right.
people recent,
Sure.
challenging the development partners. Why do you want not to invest in infrastructure? And it was very spot on. The last time we did investment was Chinese with the SGR.
Yeah.
The
And
issue
he's
of
been
power.
harping on it for a while.
Yeah,
But
and he
you
said
come
power.
on- yeah.
I need power. I need to bring cost of production down. And irrigation, my pet subject, is saying, if I have to produce food, you need irrigation. And then I like the point he raised, and he really came hard on his governor of Uganda Central Bank. And I say, I don't like this nonsense of my governor telling me he has enough reserves for imports. How can you be in a country and you are keeping reserves for imports? And I found that very interesting.
Right.
Because you are really not looking at export, and export here comes from the production. And that made a lot of sense. And poor the Muhindi, I don't know his name, the guy of the World Bank, was just quiet there looking at this man.
Ajay.
And I got that video. I'm teaching a course of global economics and sustainable development. And there's a video I'm really sharing. It's a very interesting one, about 31 minutes. And it was spot on. But for last to work, Congo must talk to Uganda. Uganda must talk to Senegal. Senegal must talk to Botswana. If you don't do that, forget it. It's a continent.
Right.
And that's what Shem alluded to earlier on, this economic integration.
Right.
Maybe the ball at some point, I hope we talk about the American Chamber Summit.
Yeah, we will. We will
because
definitely.
at the World
Yeah,
Bank
that is in the
meeting-
pipeline. But I
Yes.
wanted just to come back home a bit and also just juxtapose what was happening yesterday and what is on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Because we've been talking about permanent staff and the contractual also employment to morph the civil service to on a contractual basis. But let's see what was happening yesterday. And we know nothing to celebrate for Kenyans workers. Contrary to expectations, all the laborers did not go home with goodies, as has been in the past, in the name of minimum wage bill. Instead, President Ruto, while presiding over the 59th Labor Day celebrations, called for talks between the relevant stakeholders with a view of reviewing the minimum wage bill by at least 6%. KTN's Noah Kipkemboi start us off.
The anticipation for majority of Kenyans on Labor Day was hope for increased minimum wage.
Na tunaomba yeye atupatie 22.5% or whatever he has put in his pockets. Ama tena nimesema vibaya? Nikiomba hiyo nimesema vibaya.
But on their side, employers were not in any way for a review of wages.
And I understand where it's coming from, because the workers are struggling with a reduction in their take-home pay. But the reality is that there is no legal framework that supports general wage increases in Kenya. This, in fact, would negate freedom of enterprise.
A stance that did not sit well with the workers.
Kama unaweza kunja macho, because Jacqueline said, oh, general wage increase, that is employer now. It's not anchored on any law. We must have wages council sit and discuss and see how this general wage works. Let me remind my sister here, my twin sister. In 1972, when our economy was not performing, the founding father of this nation, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta, announced general wage increase at that time of 15%. Which law was it anchored to? Anything that comes from the mouth of the president, let me tell you, people, anything that the president akikusalamia jambo, that is law.
Then came the man of the moment, President William Ruto, with many workers hoping for an announcement of minimum wage increase.
Na ndio mimi nataka sasa nimwambie waziri wetu wa leba aite kamati ile inahusika na waketi chini, minimum wage tuongeze at least minimum by 6%, na mtaniambia vile hesabu hiyo itafanyika. Alafu pale mbele tutaongea na nyinyi vile mambo itakavyo kwenda mbele.
Themed around digital economy, the general consensus was that the Kenyan workforce needs to be upskilled to maximize productivity under the smart economy, further noting that labor export is the new frontier for growth.
It is my intention that every year we should be able to send 250,000 Kenyans to work in different parts of the world so that we can enhance and we can increase the number of people who are working abroad and also enhance our remittances from abroad.
The new jobs in the digital and gig economy come with limitations on how work is organized and regulated, with workers having limited job security, restricted access to social protection, career progression, and the lack in the right to organize collectively.
Now, Kenyans leave Uhuru Gardens with nothing concrete other than a promise of a committee meeting to discuss a minimum wage increase of 6%. But as it stands, it remains status quo. Now, Kip Kimboy, KTN News, Uhuru Gardens, Nairobi.
Yes, indeed, and as a country commemorated the labor struggle and investment in labor rights, healthcare workers are still grappling with unmet demands, sparking discussions for dialogue. Yakuni Kelvin sheds light on the prolonged healthcare crisis, well, within its second month, with calls for dialogue taking center stage during the celebrations.
As the country marked Labor Day, the unrelenting doctors continued with their strike, with calls for dialogue between the government and healthcare workers dominating the celebrations despite unmet demands.
We have been in this country for a long time, and any time that workers are looking for money, they are being told there is no money. But there is always a way. I hope we pick it from the tone of the Cabinet Secretary for Labor, that in this era we need to engage tripartite engagement. Consultation is very, very important. We let all parties come to table and then let us square all this.
Anything that comes from the mouth of the president, let me tell you, people, anything that the president akikusalamia jambo, that is law. That is law. Usifikire utaenda kutafuta law ingine pale ingine. So wacha tupeleke president pole pole na tumwangalie, tumchunge na yeye atatuchunga. Na tunaomba yeye atupatie 22.5% or whatever he has put in his pockets.
On March 14th, doctors abandoned hospital wards and took to the streets, calling on the government to meet demands that have crippled the seamless delivery of services in the sector. However, speaking during the Labor Day celebrations today, President Ruto acknowledged the constitutional right to industrial action, but noted that healthcare workers' demands exceed the country's economic capacity, saying cooperation and understanding between all parties is essential to resolving the ongoing paralysis.
It is neither just, proper, nor reasonable for any group to make demands that run counter to this imperative, elevate their claims above legitimate benchmarks, or exceed our economic capacity.
The union leaders have emphasized on the need for deliberate, fruitful, and progressive discussions to address the doctors' grievances.
I want to urge workers, including our daughters and sons who are doctors, that as social partners, we must swiftly address the pertinent issues at hand, ensuring that essential services continue uninterrupted and our commitment to serving our citizens remain unswerving.
On the 59th Labor Day celebrations in Uhuru Gardens, Kenyans came out with expectations, with the health workers believing that the government will give them something small. Going forward, what will happen to these demands? Nyakundi Kelvin, KTN News.
Meanwhile, Central Organization of Trade Unions Secretary General Francis Atwoli has fired back at his critics who claim he has failed to champion the rights of Kenyan workers for the 23 years he has been at the helm of leadership. Atwoli, who seemed to respond to recent attacks by the Private Security Regulatory Authority Director General, that is Fazul Mohammed, said his achievements spanning over 2 decades can be seen and felt. KTN's Emmanuel Tu has more.
Responding to a recent string of attacks and a seemingly simmering revolt within the Central Organization of Trade Unions, COTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli seemed to train his guns on the Director General of the Private Security Regulatory Authority, PRSA, Fazul Mohammed, accusing him of being used politically to divide the union.
And some say Atwoli, amekaa tu pale, hii mzee ni mzee wa ujuzi, mzee wa kisasa. We have moved from issues of advocacy, agitation, and so on to impress upon dialogue between us and employers.
Na nimeona umeanza kuchokozwa. Lakini usife moyo pia wewe papa. Wale wametumwa kunichokoza pia ndio wametumwa wale wanakuchokoza. Na itaisha. Hiyo ni siasa ya kawaida, itaisha. Stand strong, stand firm. You're the leader of the trade union movement, not just in Kenya, but in Africa. You must be respected. Francis Atwoli apatiwe heshima yake kama kiongozi wa wafanyikazi katika sio tu Kenya, lakini katika bara la Afrika.
Atwoli, who spoke during the 59th Labor Day celebrations at Uhuru Gardens on Wednesday, enumerating some of the achievements during his tenure that spans over 2 decades.
We are busy with the employers in boardrooms, negotiating for good terms and conditions of service of our members. And Jacqueline is here. She can bear me a witness. In my own union, this year, I signed more than 44 CBAs to cushion workers from the cost of living.
We have asked Raymond Omolo, PS, if you integrate the workers in the security sector to our security infrastructure, we'll have a safer country. Wako zaidi ya nyumba 10, hao ni nyumba zote.
Fazul had recently directed all private security firms to stop the deductions and remittances of security guards' monthly trade union fees contributions to COTU, promising a revolution. Fazul maintained that Atwoli had failed to cater for the interest of COTU members. Atwoli, who has been COTU's boss for 23 years, has been accused of overstaying in office, but he maintains his years of service and wisdom are just what the union needs to reach greater heights. Emmanuel To, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right. So when they talk about Atwoli kuchokozwa, this is how he has been chokozwad, so to speak, with the editorial cartoonist. And we can see in the Star, happy Labor Day. From tomorrow, all workers will receive a salary increment. That was then. Chairman COTU here, 1924. And now, this is happy Labor Day. From tomorrow, all workers will receive a salary increment. Francis Atwoli, Chairman COTU, that was year 2024. Right? That's a century. The narrative has not changed. That is, the narrative has not changed. Okay, and it seems they were at it. May 2001, these were the workers carrying Atwoli. All right. And now, May 2024, these are the hustlers now carrying Atwoli. Tuende mbele. This is what Gams had drawn inside the Standard. Another Labour Day. Usual empty promises, long on speeches, little on delivery. Until next year, and you can see the person who is the conductor of the orchestra is himself, and the person playing the guitar is himself. Right.
The clothing have changed.
The clothes, okay, yesterday actually it was color purple. And it is in yellow today as well. We take a short break. You're watching